Welcome to Cinema Gulp. This is Beelzebub.
And this is Clown Thor. And this is our third ever Halloween mixer.
Cheers!
Ah!
Hail Satan.
Another! Happy Halloween! Happy October! This is our year 3 of the annual Halloween mixer. John / I don't know what the hell that name was you called yourself.
Beelzebub.
Beelzebub. I'm so happy. This is the best time of year to swing your hammer, get your blade going, act like an asshole.
The mixer is all about horror movies, so we put, if you've seen our video for our selection process, we put eyeballs with different categories written on them and did our Tumblr. And we picked 3 categories this year, which sadly weren't quite the original categories we were hoping for, similar to ones we've done in the past, but still brought us some fun movies.
And the movie that we picked for our classic horror movie, which this year is 1960s and older, is the Italian film from 1960, directed by Mario Brava, Black Sunday.
So we also picked a religious possession horror movie.
Always creep me out, those ones.
Yeah, those can really fuck with your head. And for the movie, for that category that we decided to go with, something Ben and I both had not seen but have heard of for many years, The Entity. So we'll get into that.
I hear it's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
And then the last category that we selected was sci-fi horror, which I want to say we did last year. And the movie that we selected for this one is the 1988 remake that's 10 million times better than the original, The Blob, starring none other than Johnny Drama himself, Kevin Dillon.
And Shawnee Smith! Woohoo!
Oh, yes, Shawnee Smith, Spank Bank queen of the late 1980s. Let's talk about what you're wearing there, John. What's your costume all about? What's it got to do with this movie?
Heard that this movie may deal with some satanic cults, so I think this is going to be a perfect costume for this.
Yeah,
How about yours? How's yours going to fit into a satanic cult movie?
Well, I am Thor, God of Thunder, and there is some thunder sound effects in this film, but more than that, they swing a big fucking hammer from what I understand. So what we're drinking in the vein of, I don't know what it has to do with this fucking movie. I just think like in this time this movie takes place, which is a couple hundred years ago, they might drink something similar to this. This is Elysian Night Owl Pumpkin Brew, and it's absolutely delicious. Thank you for everything you do, Elysium. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into 1960s Black Sunday.
Not since Dracula stalked the earth has the world known so terrifying a day or night.
It is I who renounce you, and in the name of Satan I place a curse upon you.
Man, I'm glad I picked this movie. I am so glad I picked this movie. Directed by Mario Bava. This movie is Italian, and when it came out initially, it was actually banned from the country that it was filmed in from being played for graphic violence and disturbing imagery. I see where that comes in a little bit, especially in the opening scene of the movie.
Yeah, it may have been just that the censor board watched the first 10 minutes and couldn't get past that, which is understandable.
Yeah, I think it's, dare I say, this movie's ahead of its time.
I think so.
It feels like a very mature film for being one of those black and white classic, foreign movies. It's not hokey.
Not at all.
It's spooky. It's atmospheric. It doesn't... I love those goofy ones for what they are, like the Wolfmen fighting Dracula and stuff. For what they are, they're fun. This movie was scary, right? It was pretty scary.
Yeah, it had a nice, creepy atmosphere.
It was kind of everything the Nun should have fucking been.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Boy, does this movie suck.
No, as we were watching this, we were very impressed, and I was telling Ben, I think that this could easily go on a list of one of my favorite classic horrors because it just is so well made. That's one of the problems, I think, with some of the classic horror films is they were treated as low-budget productions, and it kind of stands out. You sometimes have hokey sets and bad acting and things. And this movie, I think everything on a production level, on a filmmaking level in this movie really stands out as top-notch. And I was really impressed with this whole production.
Yeah, I really enjoyed, from the very first scene, which is probably the most disturbing scene in the film, the use of camera angles, the use of lighting, the lack of fog machine, thank you. But there is just some interesting decision making in how they decided to frame shots and angle shots through trees and through branches, a way that's really focused and that adds suspense and adds kind of the more like horror to it. Because a lot of the things about horror movies is how they're shot, not just like what is on screen, but how they're being portrayed.
100%, yeah. And that's another thing I was saying to you is this director, I'm not that familiar with this director's filmography,
not
but
at all.
I was so impressed with his filmmaking techniques that I just wonder if this guy, I want to see the rest of his filmography, because I think whether he was making a horror movie or a drama, I think it would be a good movie, because I think he just really knows filmmaking.
Yeah, he knew it before a lot of people knew it. Yeah, because just the subtle decisions that he made, quiet moments of suspense, and it's just a detailed movie. And though the story elements kind of dissolve a little bit in the second half. Not dissolve, but they kind of start to really slow down. You're kind of led to believe they're maybe into witchcraft, or there's some sort of vampire curse on these princes and princesses, and they're kind of tortured and killed to kind of rid their evil spirits or whatever. But there's always a way for them to come back, and then these doctors kind of stumble upon one, and there's a resurrection taking place. So that's the basic story of it. Is like this woman on Black Sunday, 200 years from her death, is trying to be resurrected.
The cinematography is excellent in this movie. Not just the lighting alone, which is really effective for classic horror, black and white classic horror filmmaking. Like, there's just some really striking images in this film that play with things that you would seen in like German expressionism type of cinematography.
Oh, exactly.
And then even more modern filmmaking. So, but even beyond the lighting, just the camera work in this film, there's some really great use of long takes in this movie that I think at the time they were made would have been complicated to accomplish.
Yeah.
There's just some great camera moves where I think in a lot of older films you get more editing versus actual camera movement sometimes. And this movie stood out that they had a lot of fluid camera work that I was just very impressed with.
There's a really amazing establishing shot that trucks around and moves around and gives you a different perspective of the room, shows you three different characters and what they're doing, and then goes back to the first character is focused on, all in one take, all in one shot. It was a beautiful shot, and it was like a lot of shots in this movie, it was haunting because of how it's portrayed, and like the sound design is another thing that's really great in this film too. Like, it stands out. It doesn't use those typical sounds of that era, like ooh, like when you hear like, oh, those are wolves and the wolves are out tonight. It was a weird, creepy type of wolf sound.
Yeah. As the movie progresses, obviously they take their time to set up once they jump 200 years from this intro scene to our current characters, and they take their time, and there's some nice pacing in this movie to get the story rolling and set up. But once we start moving towards the climax, we notice that they actually are picking off a lot of characters in somewhat of a slasher format, where this movie actually racks up a pretty good body count by the end, and a few of those deaths, they're not super graphic and violent like some of the things we saw at the very beginning of the film. They even go with a little bit of off-camera moments, as you would expect from this era.
They even fucking slit the throat of two fucking dogs. You're like, holy shit, this movie is doing this shit.
Yeah.
And I mean, even like some of the suggestive deaths where they don't show it, like when you see them like stab, they cut before you see the eyeball get stabbed, but you're like, holy fuck.
Yeah, that still was like, I almost wanted to close my eyes.
I think it takes a perfect amount of time to show us its kind of prologue intro, to set up characters, to set up the situation, then to get the tension starting to rack up, and then actually give us a climax that works. It's a long climax that gives us time. Feels like this overall wrap-up of things. Maybe the final shot, you and I were like, ah, because the fucking witch just like drops off that ladder and burns into the biggest fire you've ever seen. Man, every set piece is so intricate and so big. Like, it's like this is a beautiful set to like walk. I mean, it feels like the whole movie was like a big giant haunted house and they had like a month to shoot in or something.
Yeah, I mean, every piece of production design and set design in this movie really stands out. As the attention to detail to create these sets really stands out. It's beautiful. I was even thinking while watching it, that crypt where the woman is kept, the witch. It was just so impressive looking, the depth that they created and the different lighting effects in there.
Yeah.
It was like you could put this in a modern movie and it would still be impressive. Like if you used this set for a modern movie, I'd be
impressive.
like, wow, this is a fucking awesome, creepy looking crypt set.
Granted, I said I don't think this movie would have worked as well if it wasn't black and white.
I agree.
Like if they tried to remake this movie and give it a lot of color, it just would have changed a lot about it for me. You know, especially the face makeup of the kind of the Walking Dead or whatever.
100%. I agree.
Yeah, not as good as my makeup, but hey, we can't all be that good. I'm pure good and lightning, so that does nothing to me.
That's true. Yeah.
All I am is cotton candy and fucking lightning. So I kind of love Black Sunday. There's actual filmmaking.
Oh.
This movie is like, wow, this is how you make a horror movie.
So impressive.
60 years ago, or well, I'm not a mathematician. I don't know how long ago it was, but
This is a movie, of course, I've heard of it for a long time, but I don't know if I would have ever gotten around to just finding this movie and watching it if it wasn't for Mixer. Now I've seen it, and I think it's one of my favorite classic black and white horror movies.
the only thing I ever knew about this movie, you know, when it was talked about or whatever, is you see the masks, that image, and that scene where they just these nail masks, this masks lines with nailed, and this fucker is boom,
And to torment and destroy.
boom, and like they don't shy away. There's some splatter
No.
coming out of that thing.
That's the best scene.
Yeah, so you could tell we both love Black Sunday. We're getting the Mixer off to a fucking great start.
Hell yeah.
Set the bar really high. All right, so I'm the town outcast, badass.
And I'm the town sheriff. And you're under arrest, punk.
Fuck you. No, I'm not. I got a problem with authority. Hey, fuck that. No one cuffs me. Hey, you got keys for that?
If it had a mind, you could reason with it. If it had a face, you could look it in the eye. If it had a body, you could shoot it.
So we just watched our next movie, which was sci-fi horror. We watched the remake of the classic movie from the 50s, The Blob.
And this one took place in 1988, right when my hairdo was hitting its peak of popularity. It's supposed to be a mullet, in case you were wondering.
Might have lasted just for that 1 year, 1988, the only time the mullet was popular.
Nah, that's not true. 89, and if you watch certain episodes of Cops, it went all the way into the 90s.
I went to the Dairy Queen. And
We'll talk about. So we just watched our science fiction horror movie, and in honor of that, we have a new beer that we're drinking. It's actually a cider unfiltered called Space.
Where the blob came from.
Or did it?
Cheers to that.
Cheers.
That is true. We learned some information in this movie. Who knows if the blob is really a space alien? I
Sheriff?
thought it was.
Sheriff, let's get into the Blob, because I fucking love 1988's The Blob. As a kid, I saw it more times in the theater than I can possibly even count. I snuck in every time because I think I was 11. Love this movie.
And I was very afraid to watch this movie when I was a kid. I know we talked about this. I saw it when I was young, but I was like scarred from some of the killings in this movie. The violent deaths in this movie had me never wanting to watch this movie again until today.
You're a big pussy, Sheriff.
I am a big pussy.
That's the most pussy thing I've ever heard in my life, Sheriff.
Well, I was saving it for a special occasion like today. And I'm glad I did because I had a great time watching this movie. What a hell of a fun time.
I remember watching this movie, and I vividly still remember when you said, God, we could do The Blob, man, but like, just so you know, that movie fucked me up, and I don't want to be eating during it. I knew exactly what you were talking about because the punch of this movie is those fucking kills and like just the non-apologetic way of like not being scared to kill like kids in gruesome ways and like sweet women that are just closing up diners. This movie has it's a steamroller of like, get the fuck out of my way or you're dead, and I love it for that.
Yeah, we were talking about while watching this movie that there's not many characters that they set up to be where you don't like them. You know, most horror movies have that obvious fodder of, oh, well, there's the bully, he's gonna die. There's the punk, he's gonna die. There's the sheriff who, you know, the mean sheriff or whatever. They set up certain characters so you know that they're just fodder to be killed by monsters or whatever. And in this movie, almost every character they kind of seem like somebody that you could get behind and like. They had the good qualities. They cared about the other people in the town. And so when they actually do get killed by the Blob, you kind of feel really bad. You're like, oh my God, that was a little boy. I'm never going to forget some of these death scenes in this movie. They're grotesque, that is for sure.
They are fucking disturbing. And if you don't know, the Blob is based on an old classic quote-unquote film called The Blob. It's just about a meteorite that shoots into Earth and turns into a blob and terrorizes a small town. This movie is the exact same plot, but they just take it in such a bigger horror element. It's still science fiction, and especially when you see sort of like the government people show up, it has that little ET vibe. You're like, who is doing what? What is the purpose of this? What are they trying to find out? And then, you know, it's a 30-year-old movie as of this year. So, God, I can't believe it's a 30-year-old movie.
Doing an anniversary screening right now.
So I can spoil the shit out of it and say, like, the government people, you find out they're the ones that kind of created this thing. It didn't come from outer space. It's part of like a weapons design program that they're doing to try to take over the fucking world or some shit.
Now, see, that's just what a young punk would say. Blaming the government. Blaming, you know, the man.
I'm just riding my fucking motorcycle, drinking my milk.
Yeah, you stick to that. What I really love about this movie is that it stars Shawnee Smith, a girl from my past that I had quite a crush on.
Let's talk about that.
I'd love to put her in a cell and spend a night with her, you know, with my nightstick. Well, I won't go into details.
Did you ever give her your blob?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she got a few blobs on that TV screen.
Her on a magazine spread, and like your blob ended up on the magazine. The acting in this movie, it should be just atrocious, but for some reason it just plays well with the rest of the movie. Like, Kevin Dillon, like you said, you don't really feel he's just a guy reading lines. And in this movie, that's really all he has to be. But he has the best 1988 like leather shirt or leather jacket, bad boy strut I think I've ever seen. No one pulls it off like Kevin fucking Dillon. Well-paced, gets you into the story right away, and it really never slows down. Like, these kills just start racking up, and every time you're like, oh, where's the blob? Boom, there it is, and just...
There are faces that end up looking like this, a hell of a lot like this, just peeled back, the skin and everything just ripped right off the skeleton.
And it's so realistic looking, as what I would picture that would look like. There's a couple of composited, kind of off shots in this film.
Couple of effects as the blob gets bigger and they need to show a bit more of a wide shot, like a whole city street with the blob.
But it looks better than I remember, because I remember going into this and saying, oh, there's a couple, like the close-up shots, it's masterful. And then the wide shots, it looks really wonky. I was actually a little more impressed than I remember. Like a lot of, I mean, there's always that obligatory shot where like someone like stands in front of the green screen and looks like this and then runs off. Yeah. And you get Kevin Dillon doing that at that one moment at the end, and it's almost like it's a joke.
But his mullet looked great in that shot.
Yeah, it did. Thank you.
Chuck Russell, the director of this movie.
Yeah, Chuck Russell, and then this also had Darabont's stamp all over it too.
Exactly.
A lot of the actors are Frank Darabont's. It had the similar feel with the town.
Yes, the small town feel that he presents to a lot of his films. You know, he's made some really fun movies, I would say. I think that's a good stamp of his films, is that they all seem fun. I think of all four of those movies as being fun
and
movies.
Well-paced.
And you see it. You'll recognize a lot of faces.
The guy from from RoboCop. One of the best death scenes of all time.
And he's got an epic death scene in this movie as well.
He sure as hell does. But is there a non-epic death scene in this movie?
Not really. Almost everybody who gets it from the blob, it's pretty epic.
That's the only thing they care about in this movie is like the death scene.
Yeah. supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be gory. And these kills stick with you. They really do. I don't know anybody who would walk out of this movie and not remember these things for like the rest of their life, because they really do just grow. They're so grotesque.
The movie is a symphony of grotesque imagery and kills and fun 80s schlock. Love this movie. So we just finished watching The Entity, the third movie in our Halloween mixer. If you don't know what The Entity is, it's considered the ghost rape movie.
Now, don't confuse that with Ghost Dad, starring Bill Cosby.
I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul! I'll swallow your soul!
Swallow this.
20th Century Fox presents the story of Carla Moran, the most extraordinary case in the history of psychic research.
Everything broke loose. It went crazy, and everything was shaking. The bed was shaking, and the walls were shaking.
I'm joined here by a celebrity reviewer today. We have Charlie Harper from 2.5 Men.
Oh, and it's nice to join you guys in Cinema Gulp, and we're actually drinking these we call them Time of the Months, is what we call them, Time of the Months, and it's made with this new vodka that my sister company's working on. Oh, they're fabulous, John, just fabulous. Cheers.
Cheers. What did you think of this movie?
Well, the reason that I'm here, John, is because I heard there was some boobage going on in this movie. Imagine to my surprise, there actually was some Barbara Hershey boobage in this movie. I'll tell you right now, Barbara Hershey's nudity gave me the Hershey squirts. We'll say, oh yeah.
Well, I enjoyed seeing Barbara's bush. And I'm not talking about the First Lady either.
Oh,
oh my God. That's a strong time of the month. Oh my God.
You're hanging out with Charlie Harper now. Don't be a pussy, John.
That's true. All right. This movie was kind of a shock. Oh my God. This was like hanging out with Charlie Harper. You never know what's going to stick up your ass at any minute.
You never know what's going to happen, John. You never know.
It's got a sensitive subject. It deals with rape. We just have to put that out there. Just get your rape whistle and be ready for some intense fucking raping in this movie. Right from the get-go. It does not hold anything back. We looked over 6 minutes into this movie. A ghost is fucking throwing people across the room, splitting their legs open, and raping the shit out of them. No waiting, no setup, just happens right at the beginning of the movie. It's just crazy.
And this was the longest movie out of the three movies. It did really start up really fast, and I was thinking, oh, this is going to be a shorter one, because it just starts out like that the first few minutes. But no, this movie keeps going, and it keeps going. It ratchets up that tension. It ratchets up that just terrifying atmosphere, and a brilliant Barbara Hershey performance. I thought it was fantastic. It was the best acting job of the day for the movies.
Sure. Barbara Hershey is excellent in it. Really sells the intensity of the moments when she's being attacked by the ghost. I think this might have been my favorite pick of the day.
Time of the month again. I think it still was the best of the day, even though it started to go down a little bit, ended a little softer than I wanted to, but boy,
it started hard.
Tense.
It sure started hard.
This movie was tense. This movie was fucking tense. Insane.
Yeah, especially for two guys who had never seen this movie. It really caught us off guard to some degree. We weren't sure if it was going to be like one or two moments in this movie where the rape scene happens, and that's what all the shock is about in this movie. It continues to happen all throughout the movie. I mean, it's not a one-time thing in this movie.
Jaw on the floor.
Yeah. Yes, we really were.
Shit. No matter how many times it happens, every time you're like, whoa.
Expect in some horror movies, when it gets a little quiet or everything seems too safe, that's when the scary moment's going to happen. But they don't really use the typical jump scare element, but they still get an effective jump scare out of you when this thing appears out of nowhere and starts punching people in the mouth and splitting their legs apart. And
this movie's sort of the template for jump scares, isn't it? It's kind of like, this isn't a jump scare, but people will look at something like this and be like, oh, see what they did? See that effect? Let's use that, and they'll call it a jump scare. It's a musical cue. This movie's got some fucking crazy music. My heart was pounding in this movie, like on multiple occasions. Yeah.
Well, and that's what the score sounds like. It's like a pile driver pounding. It's really intense and crazy. The first time it happened, I wasn't sure if that was the sound of the ghost raping her in the bed pounding against the wall.
It almost seems like that's kind of what it's
mimicking, even though
Yeah.
it's maybe a little distasteful. But take it from Wild Thing Ricky Vaughn here. He knows his rough sex. And that sound definitely added to that a little bit.
And he knows tasteful, that's for sure.
I definitely know tasteful. You better believe it, man. You could just ask Jana Jameson, man. That was the most romantic date of her
Hey,
life.
how's your glass of AIDS tasting?
Tastes just like Altoid blowjob, John.
Let's talk about the script of this movie.
It was so great. It was
Yeah.
so refreshing that, like, people are not fucking morons. They establish the realism of how when someone's trying to process this, maybe they don't want to tell people. Mm-hmm. But then this happens so many times with movies, whether it's a horror movie or not that you and I watch, we always come back to this, like, tell somebody, just break it down for people. And
Tell
like,
them the truth.
And characters in this do it when they feel it's the time to do it, and it kept happening over and over again where we're like, yes. So tell them the initial setup of this movie, you know?
Well, there isn't a whole
Pretty
lot.
much did. It's Go Straight.
Yeah,
That's
there
it.
isn't a whole lot of setup, but essentially, yeah.
Barbara Hershey has a son who could be her father.
Well, that part is hard to explain.
Well, no,
Her
they say she had a kid when she was 15.
Yeah, but her
Whatever.
family dynamic, from the beginning of the movie, you might be a little bit confused about who is this woman, how old is she, and who are these people in her life. They eventually...
She looks like she's 21.
Well, and I think a lot like what you're saying is the script, sometimes we were kind of questioning, well, what's going on here? Why doesn't this person speak up and say this? Why don't they tell the truth in this moment? But then eventually it gets there. Eventually that person does speak up, or
Yes.
eventually that person says the right thing at the right moment.
Yes.
So that's what impressed us, that the script finally gets there. But yeah, you have some of those moments where you're watching it questioning, well, why doesn't this person do something different in this moment?
Totally agree.
Charlie,
Totally agree.
yes. It was a smart script. It was a really interesting script. I guess this is based on a true story. I'd be interested to kind of search out and see what parts of this really seem to be the true story and what aren't.
You pervert.
We certainly saw how this could influence things like films like The Conjuring. We even saw how maybe this helped influence something like Poltergeist or the Ghostbusters to some degree.
I definitely had Ghostbusters vibes when they meet those parapsychologists.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a fucker that looks like Egon.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that segment of the film until we get to our final climax. And we both kind of felt that the climax got a little convoluted and didn't really hold up to the tension building of the initial first 2/3 of the film. And then by the final act, they just go a little over the top with the paranormal parapsychologists trying to capture the ghost to some degree, and it just wasn't really believable. It didn't make a whole lot of sense, and kind of ended on a little bit of a sour note where we were let down by how great the first 2/3 of the film really were.
Would you agree that the movie felt like it was micro-budgeted, and then when the third act came, they came into like $5 million that they weren't expecting?
Apparently.
Like, let's make the end huge, like, because it didn't fit the rest of the movie.
Well, yeah, like you kept talking about her apartment being so small, and
yeah, and then all of a sudden they're like, let's make this giant gymnasium, this big science experiment with these special effects, and you're like, what? No, it's such the scariness is just that it's just her in her house, and she's got little kids, and
these brutal moments instead of this science fiction-y kind of moment at the end.
Yeah, I didn't like
really...
it at all. The inevitable outcome of the film, you know, it's hard to tell what's real and what's just based on the story. And sometimes that works in a movie, and sometimes it doesn't. Like, you don't know what liberties they take. You don't know what they're adding to make it more a large scale. Like we said, the ending of this
Pretty
movie
sure
was
the
probably
gymnasium
all
was
bullshit.
added.
The camera is just dead set and so close on Barbara Hershey when she's talking to her friends, when she's talking to her psychologist. They're very extreme close-up shots of her every time she's talking.
Yeah,
and then you have to be a good actress to do that. You can't get away with it otherwise.
I saw shades of Ripley in her, like her strength and even kind of the way she sounded.
And her panties, the same panties, the little butt crack and stuff when Ripley changed.
I think that was just a popular choice for late 70s, early 80s panties.
I am all for it. I like the easier they are to peel off, the better for me.
Of course. When she's being violated in this movie a number of times, she's laid spread naked across the bed, and they do some amazing effects with her body. And I'll let you talk about it in specific, because I'm pretty sure you helped out with these effects, right, Charlie?
Well, I've got to admit, I wish I did. I blame this little sucker down here. This is the entity right here. He's the one that got his fingers dirty, if you know what I'm saying. This movie, it deals with harsh subject matter. It's hard to stomach, but at the same time, you're very like, wow, this is done really, really well, which looks to be like such a small budget. And I'm thinking 1982, how'd they pull this off? Who the fuck knows? I have no idea.
The answer? Stan Winston. Stan Winston made those boobs look so realistic.
Ah, he's awesome, man. He's awesome.
R.I.P. Stan.
There are little moments where you don't know if, like, it's going to end up being something that's just completely in her head.
Yes.
That goes away once you see 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people actually witness this whole manifestation happen.
Well, and one of the most disturbing scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Maybe only 30 minutes in, maybe third or fourth time that the assault happens, it happens right in front of her children.
Yeah.
Two of them that are probably 7 and 8-year-old girls watching
Just
their mother
unfair.
let's not use the word violated.
Not fair.
Right in front of them in the living room. I mean, this movie is shocking.
Wow, what a great third annual Halloween mixer, right, John?
So much fun. Excellent time today.
Oh my God, cheers. This is amazing. So, we saw 3 great films. Stay on the lookout for an entire month of October filled with Halloween spectacle from Cinema Gulp. We have the Halloween reboot, whatever the fuck it is called, coming out. We're going to do a big show with me, John, and Devin for that one. So be on the lookout. It's October. This is the month. We're coming at you early with this one because we want you to be able to access it all month long.
So many great Halloween-themed shows coming up for you, including A Star is Born.
You can catch us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Or did you do that already?
All right.
This time of the month is starting to really kick in.
I seriously think I'm getting hit hard by this period.
I want to drink your cinema.